So meetings is Zoom.
Yeah, I have Zoom.
Oh, yeah. So
Okay.
I did an hour on Lakeland.
Oh.
Yeah, got to do for the Southern
Yeah.
real estate class yesterday.
Yeah, I'm on their campus now. Foundation of the Roberts Foundation.
Good morning, y'all. Good morning.
Morning.
How you all doing this morning?
Great and mighty good to see you, sir.
As well. It's good to be alive and well, yes. As we call our, of course, September board meeting to order, and if we could rise at this moment for a moment of silence and observance of Patriot Day, and of course, we had a employee who passed away among us as well, John Ammerheim, and we could just recognize those two particular situations as we have our moment of silence prayer. Thank you. As we call the meeting to order for September 11th, we have the first item on the agenda outside of our moment of silence prayer, the observance of Patriot Day, approval of the August 14th Lambton Board meeting minutes.
Approval of minutes.
Second.
Probably motion and second. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay. Public hearing for East County Service and comments about the East County Service. Anybody from the public want to share or talk about East County Service? All right, seeing none, do we need an approval of the new East County routes? That's
Done.
John, okay, Don, okay, come on, share with us.
We're seeking approval for the new East County routes. Through the direction of the board, we have an opportunity to design some routes to expand service of this part of the area. That's why we're seeking.
Could you run through, Mr. Dunn, the routes for us?
Can you talk a little louder too? You know, I always have this.
We're older back there.
It's not my hearing, it's the span above my ear. I'm confessing what it's not. It's not my hearing.
Okay, fine.
Oh, look, you
Thank you.
ask and you shall receive.
Thank you, ma'am.
The 1718.
All right, okay.
Okay, so essentially what has been done is 5 routes have been designed, 4 main routes. The first on the screen here is the one that really changed the most. This is the one where we reduced some service running to the east. Rodney, correct me if I'm wrong at all, to give more service into the Haines City area, and that's like a frequency change, so the overall route didn't have a reduction, you just kind of maneuvered some of the service. So now it'll make the 2 runs per day out to the east side. This route is going to be part of the contracted service. Next, please, James. This route, the 17X, is in our new bids. I actually just saw it this morning for the first time. We'll be providing this service. I don't know how much we expanded it. Robin, do you know?
This is a brand new route.
Brand new.
This is actually a direct connection. And this is in response to the 27 corridor study that's coming along about reducing congestion along US 27. With the inclusion of this route, we will now have service along US 27 all the way from Lake Wales, all the way to the Four Corners area. So this is a major new step.
That's very nice.
Great, yeah.
Was in concert with the Ridge Mayors.
Yes, sir.
It's in everything.
Our Laughlin Flex route. This route will flex out. This was being provided previously through links, correct, Rodney? No, this
This is also a brand new route. With the Laughlin expansion, as you know, that's the fastest growing area in the county. So we wanted to get into that area and start services out there. Instead of implementing a whole fixed route, we wanted to implement a flex route, get a feel for the area, and hopefully look at migrating this to the same kind of service that we provide on 603, where it's based on area with a 2-hour call ahead.
Any questions or anything? Mr. Dunn? I'm sorry, Commissioner Collins.
Thank you. On South Old Lake Wilson Road, like About how far is that? Because that's such a congested area to have a bus route on that road that
Lake Wilson Road is big 4-lane.
Yeah, please, right.
the one that runs north. South?
Yes.
Okay.
Back on the
When it heads, Old Wilson Road,
Yeah.
there is a lot of congestion there, but
Yeah.
we're not stopping until we make that curve
Okay.
on
Thank you.
Osceola Post.
Awesome. Thank you.
That's our first stop.
Get past all the congestion. Yeah.
Did they break ground on
Required right away now.
that? Yeah, because I was just on it and it was.
So bad.
Finally, the 603 is the last, okay.
Yes, and that's not gonna change. It's gonna work exactly the way it did with links. We're not gonna use the term neighborhood links, of course, but we are gonna keep the number for 603, and that's for the consumers that are using it now to make it easier for them. And we've got links permission to go ahead and keep calling it 603.
Okay.
I don't think we,
I'm sorry?
This is a contract service route.
Yes, this is also being contracted out. This is a 2-hour call ahead. And instead of, like I told you, the flex route where it veers off 3/4 of a mile in any direction, this is by area. So anywhere in that area, you can call and be picked up. And that's hopefully, once we get our feet wet in actually providing the service ourselves, and once we start building up a ridership on Laughlin, hopefully we can migrate to more of this kind of route up here in Laughlin.
Mr. Mayor, you have a question?
did we look at 18X?
We did.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go back to that then.
I'm good. I just wanted to make sure that had been included and I missed it. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
The only difference to the 18X is the downtown area is going to be serviced by the Davenport route, by the 16, because then we can go up a little bit further on Martin Luther King Boulevard and hit we're only 2 blocks away from the community center and all of that. So
Okay.
Okay, this is a public hearing and we had not had any public comments. Any more comments from the board? Seeing no, we need an approval of the new East County route.
So moved.
Second.
Properly motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right, now we stand for public comments from anyone that wants to share anything about regarding the Citrus Connection or regarding the Citrus Connection. Anyone from the public? Okay, seeing none. Mr. Phillips left us. Where?
He's on the phone, county manager, I believe.
Oh, okay. Well, we'll come back to number 5. And we'll go on to number 6. The legal board dates for Lake Area Mass Transit for fiscal year 1920. We have those dates already set for us. Need approval for those dates to be approved.
So moved.
Second.
All right, properly motion is second. Our board dates for Lincoln Area Mass Transit District meeting for fiscal year 1920. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, then we have the interlocal agreement with Polk County.
Let's move to C first, if you don't mind.
Okay,
As Mr. Phillips is not here.
okay,
Simply, this is a CRA agreement with Eloise for a shelter agreement. So the terms and conditions are similar to most everything else. So it's relatively simple. But if you have any questions, I'm more than happy to answer them.
Any questions about this shelter agreement?
To approval of the CRA LOE shelter agreement.
Second.
Properly motion is second. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
All right.
Sorry, Tim. I would want to point out that the Eloise is spelled incorrectly. We will fix it.
Yeah.
Only on the cover sheet, it's right in the contract.
Okay.
Hey, and then also, if we're just gonna skip around the alphabet here, F, with Riverstone, the annexation, this was already approved by you,
Yeah,
actually.
yeah.
However, they did not provide us the appropriate or accurate, property description.
Okay.
So, Mr. Bomby pointed that out, and I wanted to make sure that we were right. So there's nothing different about it other than the property description at this point.
Okay, and we,
This is where we add it to the district, but we don't add service.
yes,
Correct. Yeah, it's just a requirement. Yes, sir.
got a motion, do we have a second?
Yes.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, as we're taking care of, A, C,
I'm
Yeah.
sorry.
so we move it back where, Mr. Legal? From there, we're going back
Where do
up
you
to Fort Meade, share, or
Go ahead.
we skipping around?
Okay, if I may explain, apologize for the confusion. Matters relating to the interlocal agreement with the county are ongoing as we speak.
Okay,
I have just, it's
Gotten it.
still warm from the top of the meeting. A draft of an
What time
interlocal
is this?
agreement from Michael Craig, and
Just now.
there were
Okay.
negotiations up until last evening, about 5:30. Tom called me, and if I may read through this to confirm it's in accordance with what Tom
sure.
and
Why don't we just go to financials
We can,
and wait on Tom?
let me go, if I may, I'm gonna step out and
Sure.
absorb this, if I may. Thank you.
yes, so the board approval to do that, we move on to number 7.
So moved.
All right, thank you. That consists of move on to item 7, finance with Mr. Broussard. We have the Lamtech financials. You want to go through those?
Yes, good morning, board members.
Good morning.
Good morning, sir.
We do have for presentation the July financials for all 3 modes of transportation, the first being Limited. The financials are through July 31st, or 83% of the fiscal year. As you can see there, the revenues year to date through July, we are exactly at 100% of our budgeted revenues. That's primarily due to our fares being 95% collection. Our ad valorem is 4.7 million, or 1 or 2%. That's because the budget is only at 95% level. That's the reason why we're over 100%. We have drawn on our FDOT 1 million and the FTA 1.3 million. So revenues are very much in line.
Good.
On the expense side, we are 85% of the year-to-date budgeted expense, which is under. And looking at the 4 major expenses, salaries and fringes, we are 13% under budget. Fuel is under budget, and materials and supplies for parts is under budget. Overall, based on the financial performance, revenues are over expenses by 1.3 million.
Mhm.
So that gives us adequate cash flow. And we are within the budget. Any questions?
Wonderful.
Good.
Moving on, the next financial statement is for the Polk County agreement, and again, 83% of the year-to-date budget. And looking at the financials, we have collected 5.2 million, or 92%. We did receive the county payment, that was June, July, 382,000. Overall revenues are 5.2 million, and expenses are 5.3 million. We just, the revenues are over under budget, 188,000, but we do have several grants that are pending for reimbursement. So looking at the expenses, we are just 95% of the year-to-date budget, and revenues are 92%, so within the budget.
Okay.
Any questions?
Any questions? All right, moving on.
Okay, moving on. The next financial is for the contract with the state for transportation disadvantage. This agreement covers the state. It's July 1 through June 30th fiscal year. That's the reason why it's 8.3%. And the financial activities reflects the first month of operations. Revenues 111,000, expenses 90,000. So it's favorable. Any questions?
Questions? Okay. And because you need approval for that, right? That's
Thank you.
no, the next one we need approval for, okay. Polk County Transit proposed operating budget.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, I'm sorry that I had to step outside.
Yeah.
We're working on a couple of last-minute agenda item changes for you.
Yes.
This is the presentation of the fiscal year 2019-2020 operating budget for Polk County Transit Services. Commissioner Lindsay, as you can see, Mr. Bond is here, so You've had these discussions at the county level through your work session, so a lot of this may be review for you, sir. Board members, the proposed intergovernmental agreement provides for the county total funding of $2.583 million. The goal was to get under $2.66 million with the new routes that the county will be adding. So we're excited to say that we came in under budget from what we needed to do with the county. The highlights of the budget include that we are heavily relying upon the carryover 5307 money that we received from the county when we merged from the county. We are reducing the Route 427. As you all know, that 427 on the east side of the county has been over budget, and we're reducing that service by $131,890 to reduce expenses to fall in line. There is the new Route 27, which will increase funding to the municipalities of Lake Hamilton with connections between Lake Wales and Haines City. We are increasing the 5311 grant money by $164,566 to fund the new Laufman route, therefore reducing the county's cash funding for this service. The Laufman will be a flex route, as Mr. Dunn and Rod and Mr. Wetzel explained. This will be the first of its kind service that we've had in the flex routes. And these changes that we've made are really relying on grant funding and trying to have a reduced amount of county cash necessary to operate the services. Continuing forward, you'll notice one of the biggest changes, and we continue to thank the board for the support, is the city contribution changes. So we are bringing in $104,280 more in our municipal partnerships due to the fair share agreements. So all of the communities will be at their 20% fair share moving forward. I do want to take just a moment to say we've gotten here, and it is, I think, quite an achievement. But we did learn some lessons along the way, and there are just a few things I'd like to say for the record on that. I think what we learned with first Eagle Lake, and then with Frostproof, and then most recently with Fort Meade, getting to their 20% fair share, but reducing transit services by 20%, is that these small municipalities really truly have budgets that are extremely tight. In Eagle Lake, it was the decision between buying 2 new zero-turn mowers for what they needed or transit. In the case of Fort Meade, it's, I believe, revamping the water tower or doing some water tower improvements and some other pressures or funding transit. So moving forward, we're really going to work with our small municipal partners, and I've talked with Ms. Killebrew, that we really need to do as much as we can as a leadership team and ambassadors of transit to make sure that we're really making a strong transit value proposition for them in the future. Because I believe that if our value proposition were 100% of what it should be, it would have been a more difficult decision. I'm not saying that they would have gone another way, but the lessons learned from our leadership team are we're going to make sure that we're really pushing that value add to all of our communities, but especially the smaller ones, so they understand the importance of transit. Even though sitting here, how could you not do this for $11 a run of the bus or for $5,000 a year? Well, when you've got a budget crisis, that's where it is.
Sure.
So we continue to do that. The next challenge with the fair share agreements will be that this is based on the cost per revenue hour of our 2015 cost per revenue hour. So there will be need to be a discussion at the LAMTED board, but also at the county board, because the 20% fair share is a county directive to talk about what do we do next now that they're at parity for fair share. Do we take a break for a while? Do we start to move towards audited cost per revenue hour? Just things that the board will want to keep in mind, but they will be at their 20% fair share.
One question, we will, as we move and as we progress, I guess into our next fiscal year and come around when it's time for our strategic planning meeting, those are some of the things I think we should be addressing at that time. So we can hear from the staff what, some recommendations based on where and what direction. Because again, if we've already done what we asked to be done, county and us, boom, we're there now. Now where do we go now?
Yes, sir.
So I think it's important that we make those kind of comments or have that kind of discussion during the strategic planning time and as we move around into the spring of next year. Yes, sir.
There's always going to be a lag, and we need to stay whether it's a year or two, there's always going to be a lag. So we can't ignore it because sometimes there's a day of reckoning and that spread gets bigger as we ignore it.
Yeah.
So little bites frequently is better than big bites. Isn't it?
I eat elephant, right? One bite at a time.
Yes, sir.
Okay.
Excellent. So we'll plan on adding that to the LAMTD strategic planning retreat that we have.
Yes.
And then, Mr. Chairman, if you'd like, we could prepare a letter to Mr. Beasley asking the county manager possibly to seek direction from the county board, or maybe have us present at their strategic planning retreat to see from their budgetary perspective what they'd like to see as well. Because again, the decision will have to be for both boards, so we know what to tell the overall community. To Commissioner Lindsay's point, our agreement with the county, and this predates our current agreements, interlocal agreements with the county. Going back as far as, Bill, I would say the early 2000s, there's always been a true up with the county at the end of the year. And if our audited cost per revenue hour comes up, then we send an invoice to the county. If the cost per revenue hour comes in under, we refund the county. Now, that has changed over time. As we took over all of the county business, the proposal is now and has been for this last few years that if we come in under budget, we return the money to the county. If we come in over budget, we need to alert you all and ask for more money. There is no true up on the other end. That's why Mr. Prasad always presents monthly financial statements for the county, because you can count on us to always tell you if things are coming off track. So those will be discussions that we have, sir.
All right. As you continue, sir.
So again, the total overall county budget for transit services on the east side of the county is 2.583 million, under the 2.66, which was the goal. The county was presented this as part of their total overall budget yesterday, and we asked for board approval for the East County Transit Services total operating budget for 2.583,896 million. I'm sorry.
Do you want to do the agreement first before put it back?
So moved.
Second.
The question. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Okay. Now we're moving on back to, I guess, it was you, Mr. Phillips. I think we had some.
Yes, Mr. Chairman.
Legal team coming back.
So we have our legal team coming back. You have my August calendar as well as the Universal Access Program and ridership numbers. So that takes care of agenda item number 8. My recommendation at this point is we just received some information from the county on agenda item number B under 6. And then that also affects agenda item 5B. We are meeting this evening at 5:01 p.m. For our budget hearing.
Yeah.
What I would suggest at this point is to give you all the most information that we move those 2 agenda items to this evening.
That's fine. Let me wait for Ben to come back. It's very difficult to receive information 10 minutes after a meeting starts, especially a 12-page document. So we've been in contact. The attorneys are on the same page. From there, I'm not sure. So I would like to have a board discussion today, if you would like, once I pull Mr. Darby back. However, there is no way, we're reading this for the first time. There are changes.
Rather than adjourn, we just
Fine.
recess this meeting and reconvene
Reconvene in the afternoon.
the continuation of this meeting tonight.
Yes, sir.
Mr. Phillips, has the payment been paid?
Yes. The payment that we have received payment from the county.
Yeah.
So the county is current within the contract. The agenda items that I am proposing to table until this evening
That's
are
6B
6B,
and
which
6.
is the interlocal agreement. And we have a modified agenda 5B, which is writing off of aged receivables. There are 2 aged receivables there. If it so pleases the board, we have 1 small aging receivable that we could still write off right now. Miss Jane Hammond is here today from Elder Point Ministries to address that small receivable. If the board is so inclined, I would like to address that now so that Miss Hammond, we can respect Miss Hammond's time. That being said, we can continue with legal A, C, D, E, and F
Once.
We've already done
We've
those.
already done that.
We've already done
Yeah,
that.
we did that.
I was on the phone longer than I
Yeah.
thought. I apologize.
So again, only thing that we're looking at tabling and reconvening in this afternoon would be 6B.
Excellent. And then 5B will be bifurcated, so we can deal with half that right now if you'd like. Would you like to deal with the
Yes.
receivable?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay.
please.
Yes.
Do we have that other copy, James, with just Jane's information on it? We do. We do.
And this is, of course, the write-off of aging receivables, right?
Yes.
Right.
Mr. Chairman, Commissioners, agenda item 5B modified is approve the write-off of an aging receivable debt with Elder Point Ministries in the amount of $13,696.25. The district would like to take the opportunity to write off a past due amount for Elder Point Ministries to that amount. And you have the attached invoice. As many as you know, Hurricane Irma hit us 2 years ago. And Miss Hammond was nice enough to allow us to use her vehicles to transport individuals to the special needs shelters. She brought over 5 or 6 vehicles at that time that were lift equipped. And as you know, that was a Category 4 when it hit Polk County. And we used all of Jane's vehicles throughout that crisis, which lasted well over a week to not only get people to the shelters, but home from the shelters. During that time, in order to use those vehicles, Mr. Shibley and myself contacted the Florida League of Cities and were able to put Ms. Hammond's vehicles on our insurance policy so that our operators could operate those.
Mhm.
When the event passed, Jane and I had a conversation and recognized that that we were paying about 10% of what she would have paid for private market insurance. And so Mr. Shibley worked with the Florida League of Cities, and since she has a coordinating agreement with us and transports people under our coordinating agreement, and her drivers are drug tested, and we do inspections of her facility, and she does background checks of her drivers, that the Florida League was comfortable continuing to insure her vehicles.
Mhm.
And at that time, we agreed with Ms. Hammond that she would, and the board approved, so that the taxpayers were not out any funds or subsidizing Elder Point, that she would pay, this is my entire career, her fair proportional share of the insurance, which is the number you see here. Elder Point Ministries is a small nonprofit, and Ms. Hammond is having difficulty raising the funds necessary to pay this particular invoice. She and I have met, and she has promised that starting with her and our new fiscal year, October 1st, she will remain current on all of the bills moving forward. It would have been very difficult for us to provide the level of support that we did through Hurricane Irma without her vehicles. We were lauded by Polk County Sheriff Grady Judd for our response to Irma. He said that Citrus Connection always tried to get to yes and start with yes. And that was because we had the extra vehicles. And Ms. Hammond did deliver those vehicles for Hurricane Dorian, although thank God we did not need to use them. So we are asking that the board consider writing this off with the commitment from Ms. Hammond that moving forward, she will remain current, and she's here to answer any questions you have.
Okay.
Or I'm here to answer any questions you have.
Yes, sir. Commissioner Lindsey?
It's your opinion, the value of services received from them exceeds this,
It's 13,000.
13,700.
Yes. So to answer that question, the true value of what she provided, the dollar value, is the vehicles, the lift equipped vehicles. And you can rent those, assuming they'd be available for a hurricane, at $150 a day. So taking the Irma event and the Dorian event at $150 a day per vehicle does not get us to the invoice amount. However, that those vehicles would be available, or that we were able to plan for that, or that we would have even thought of that, Commissioner Lindsey. I believe the value far exceeds that. And if Ms. Hammond had not taken the risk, and this board had not taken the leap to partner with her on this insurance partnership, then Alliance for Independence would not be on board. They are paying.
Mhm.
They're one of the largest fleets in Polk County besides us that we're insuring them. So she really set the example. So I believe the community good is well north of the $14,000 because it's more than the physical vehicle rental. It's what it represents.
What can be done and shared for the community? Mr. Mayor?
Yeah, I would concur with the fact just that Elder Point gave us the opportunity to expand this other places, and that happened out of their willingness to do this in the first place. That adds to the value of why we ought to do this.
I move staff recommendation.
Second.
Probably motion second, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? And I'm gonna do, I guess, the chairman,
You
personal
just gonna give a
privilege.
raise, Jane.
If, Ms. Hammond, if you wanna share anything,
I
we would
saw my
like to.
challenge.
Do you wanna share anything at this point with us, or?
Well, I would actually, I'd like to take the opportunity to tell you why there is an issue now in moving forward, why we're committed to that. I think that's only fair. Part of what happened in the past year in application for our 5310 disabled FTA funding, this situation actually kind of worked against us. At the last minute, the DOT decided that there was not an in-kind match of value from the $13,006 to the $130,000 we have to spend on the open market. They took that match away and decided that the value of the insurance was only the actual value that we would spend. Losing $100,000 and some of match when you have to provide 50% match for operating expenses. In the last week before the proposals were due, made it impossible for us to write those grants. And so that was a deficit of $90,000 that we, theoretical, we weren't obviously guaranteed that money, but it was somewhere in the neighborhood of a $90,000 deficit that we faced basically as of December 2018. So a $90,000 deficit is a big bucket to fill for an agency our size. However, we have been diligently writing grants. We outside, it's actually, as these things generally are, it's a blessing because now we've moved away from that DOT funding and into things that are a more sustainable model, contracts that will be more sustainable with the upcoming indigent healthcare that we're recommended for. That's an year-over-year contract, and that we've been recommended for $150,000 for that in the first year. So you can see that we're not just saying, yes, we promise again to pay. We actually do have a solid plan going forward, and we're hoping to that. I would also add that in addition to that, our annual operating report this year, we went, so year over year, we were somewhere right under 4,000 rides in the previous year. This year, we're reporting 11,260 rides. So we are really trying to earn our keep. And so we appreciate your understanding.
Thank you, Ms. Hammond, for sharing it with us.
I'd just like to add that Jane jogged my memory, and since we do have the ledger here and I see she's taking notes, that also many of you may remember the very, very difficult decision that this board had to make a number of years ago when the grant funding ran out for the Smart Shuttle in Winter Haven, which was our first true premium transit service in Polk County. And it was that shuttle that operated within a 2-mile radius and provided door-to-door service to the citizens of Winter Haven. When that grant funding ran out, we didn't have the ability to provide the service. I believe we had about 20 folks who Skyped in from Winter Haven who talked about how critical that service was to their lives. Put that in perspective, that when we reduced the service by 20% after the failure of the referendum, we had one person come and object. Ms. Hammond, through Elder Point Ministries and through the insurance cooperative, was able to start effectively back up the Winter Haven Smart Shuttle. I'm not sure what she calls it, but we call it the Smart Shuttle. So she was able to fill that gap. And I think thank you, Jane, because that's an important thing to remember is the expanded services that she has provided, Commissioner Lindsay, that should have been tallied into my calculation of what she's provided.
Okay, the motion has been approved, and of course, and we thank you again for your services that you do provide to us, and when in time of need, we'll be there for us, and we will be there for you. Mr. Phillips, as I see, there may be nothing else to share other than what we're going to recess and take up the legal portion of 6B at our 5 o'clock meeting this afternoon. Is that correct?
Well, actually, the 5 o'clock meeting is a budget hearing
Well,
and,
the idea, I think, while you were out of the room was to recess this meeting,
oh,
Do that.
reconvene at 5.
okay, I did not.
Take care,
Yeah.
take care of this.
Bridge
Receive the
that.
budget.
What about
Bridge.
notice?
The problem of not having two of you. One in that room, one in this room.
Yeah,
Many,
All right, so
as far as notice, is that okay, Dad?
Yes, they can recess the meeting and now we're in a public meeting now,
Yes.
obviously.
right.
It can be recessed to that point. So,
if that's the only remaining
That's
item.
the remaining thing we gotta take care of.
Yes, I
in the
did.
interest of
Move
time, I don't know whether item number 3 is what you need to pay attention to here. If you want any explanation now, as
Why not?
as briefly as possible. Let me just outline what's happened briefly, okay? So you can read this with these thoughts in mind. And there were issues that arose relating to contract language and issues relating to the audit. They
Right,
were intertwined.
right.
Michael Craig and I have worked on this diligently, we'll say, since the last meeting. And it appeared that the issues relating to the contract language and the audit were resolved.
Mhm.
The issue came down to the handling of the funds. It's always been the spirit and intent of this agreement between both parties that what the county paid the district would be used for transportation. So this agreement, particularly in item number 3,
Mhm.
accomplishes that in that it specifically uses the term total actual costs instead of actual audited expenses.
Got it.
The actual audited expenses term is what was used in the audit. So that clarifies that.
Okay,
Otherwise, I think it's self-explanatory. So this was negotiated thanks to Tom and Bill Beasley as of last evening. And so it appears to me to be in line with what the intent of the parties is, and also has been approved. I will defer to Tom and David as to
Every time.
how it would work with the district, okay? I'll put that on them, that they have agreed to these terms, okay? So that's all. I'm in the interest of time. Sometimes I think you city commissioners need to go to another meeting tonight anyway, so.
but
Okay.
let me ask then, if that's the only concern or only item that you so relevant to share and we can take care of that. I think at this point,
Mr.
we don't need to move to having recess and we can discuss it ourselves now and we'll be done with it.
Okay, yes, sir. I think so. The only other provision of some substance related to the payment for occupancy of the Frank B. Smith Building in item number 6, the second sentence was added, the cost of occupied space will be based upon the square footage of the occupied space. That's the only thing of substance besides Article
Staff.
3.
Are you
Dean County and the legal staffs are,
All in agreement, yeah.
you're cringing.
I am.
All you could-
Can we, I would just ask, this came in 10 minutes after, and the reason I stepped out was
All right.
There's one thing.
I would ask that we just have the reset. It will be very quick.
Okay,
Okay.
I just would rather make sure that staff is
in agreement.
absolutely in agreement.
Right.
And I will say, working with Mr. Beasley has been an absolute pleasure. We were on the phone last night, and I truly believe he was at a speaking engagement last night, Commissioner Lindsay. We probably would have not bled into the morning. I apologize for stepping out of my own board meeting, or your board meeting. But because of his commitments last night, we just didn't get this done till later this morning, and I just want to make sure everything's okay. We will make it brief this afternoon.
Okay. Mr. Mayor?
Could we take a recess right now for 10 minutes to do that? How much time do you need so that we could?
Sounds great to me.
And that's where I was coming from, Mr. Phillips, because I think if you got
As far
legal,
as notice, my concern is
yeah, And you got legal saying
All right.
things look, good, it's in
We
line.
have 10 minutes.
Recess for 10
If anyone
minutes.
needs,
Well,
Probably most.
yes, and please give, well, we're out of the meeting.
Grew up with him.
I was going to read three, and it's entirely just to make sure everybody sees that it hears it.
Okay. I think you still should do that after we come back.
all right, we got 10. You guys want to go in the training room?
Aaron.
Mr. Darby,
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman, what we'd like, we spent the last 10 minutes talking. We just need to confer with, I need to confer with Bill Beasley. So we would like to recess tonight until 5 o'clock.
okay. Your motion to recess to
So
5
moved.
o'clock? All right, motion second. We'll take care of this matter and finish it up, come this afternoon, 5 o'clock.
Thank you.
All right.
We'll
5:05.
5:05, yeah, 5:05. We recess. the
Early's
meeting.
on time, though.
5:01.
Yeah,
5:01 or 5:05? We're gonna,
5:01.
we'll see at 5:00 so we can begin at 5:01. See you there.
How about y'all do that 4:45?
Yes. Gotta make sure.
That doesn't.
You're on time, you're late.
You vote?
Yeah, we voted.
Yeah.
Aye.